now move on to a panel discussion, which is focusing on the Indian coal market. So I'd like to ask two panelists to join me on the stage. So I'd like to introduce Kaamil Farid, who's here on the left. He is General Manager of Trading for Coal and Oil, and he's worked with them for many years, having, I believe, begun his career there. Am I correct? Worked for a while at Mercuria and returned eventually to Coal and Oil. He and his team manage sourcing from markets such as Indonesia, Australia, USA, and from fellow coal traders. And I'd also like to introduce Sabya Mishra, who is head of sourcing for the minerals business of Tata International, which is the trading arm of the huge conglomerate Tata Group. And Tata International trades both for the internal consumption within India, as well as for some clients in China and other Southeast Asian countries. And since the inception of the third-party trading desk in 2012, Tata International has grown to around 5 million tons traded, and that was in 2014 to 15. So I'm going to, for very selfish reasons, I'm going to start with a question for Kaamil, because in the research for this session, I noticed that, Sabya, you're a very loyal delegate of Coaltrans. You've attended 8 conferences since 2013. But Kaamil, you have attended 44 since 2003, so I'm going to give you brief priority. And I'd like to start the discussion looking at one of the slides that Fabio Gabrielli gave us yesterday. Some of you may be familiar with this. And there have been huge hopes pinned on India's growth over recent years as a savior for the coal market. But as Fabio points out in this slide, having had incremental demand growth of 20 to 30 million tons per year for a number of years, suddenly this year imports have remained relatively flat, and we're predicting growth of only around 3 million tons. So I have to ask you, Kaamil, do you agree?
Good morning, everybody. Of course, it's an interesting slide by Fabio, but more or less, I think, the numbers, I would agree with Fabio's number, but still there is an optimistic news that it can increase. So the reason being, if you see, one of the major, I would say the misunderstanding is from the international market. People expect the fallout of China's imports will be easily accommodated in India. That is not possible. India has its own annual consumption. And then we see the demand versus the production, then we go for import. You cannot just like that take the extra imports that China used to take for India. If you see the current imports in India is close to 160 to 165 million tons. And what was last year is more or less the same this year. Every end user, every power plant or cementer who has been importing are importing continuously. So there is no reduction. So that itself, I would say, a good news in the global market compared to other importing nations. The growth, I agree with Fabio that the growth, what we anticipated last year was at least 20 million tons, if I'm not wrong. So which is not there at the moment with the current economics and the current Indian economical situation. So because if you see in the power sector, last 2-3 years has been going through a turmoil because of the increase in exchange rate and various other parameters. So the growth, what we expected compared to what it is, yes, I agree with Fabio.
Fabio?
More or less broadly, I also, good morning everyone, sorry. I agree with the view that overall the demand for imported coal is going to be flat. But if you look at the micro analysis of that, the increase has been there on the private sector. I personally view that the increase in private sector for this year has been 20 to 25 million tons additional coal which is going to come in. Yes, there is a drop in the public utilities purchases this year, primarily because the incremental coal which has been made available by Coal India. So, so far, if you look at the calendar year from January to September, there's additional 30 million tons of coal which has been made available by Coal India. And that has primarily contributed to the overall imports remaining flat at those levels. So if you take that 30 million ton out, then the prediction should have been correct, about 20 million tons of increase, which was originally predicted. So that's my limited view on this.
Do either of you take a view as to why the anticipated volume of imports of the domestic power generation, I mean the state utilities, was lower than expected?
I don't think it's been lower than expected, but it has been met, their requirements has been met by additional coal production, which has been made domestically available. And that's I think, our underlying topic for today's discussion as well, that the ambitious plan which Coal India has undertaken for itself for 2020 to be a billion-ton producer. That's I think, a step towards in that direction. We need Coal India to grow at 14 to 15% CAGR basis to achieve a billion-ton production by 2020. So,
do you think that's realistic?
Well, there is always optimists and there are always cynicals. So I would put myself more on the cynical side here, because I see that they have to take certain big steps in evacuating the coal from the pits that they're going to produce. There is a concentration risk. They're talking about 25 mines, only 25 mines producing 300 to 400 million tons of that incremental volume. So you're dependent on those 25 mines really functioning to its full capacity. Then there is the evacuation risk. Currently, the railway infrastructure is fully utilized. So they need to bring in 350 million tons of additional rail capacity. So there are big steps to be taken. But the intent is definitely there. The government has made it clear. In fact, I would give full credit to the current government to just turn it around on its head. I mean, the previous government was talking about incremental improvements in Coal India. Now it has set itself a monumental task of doubling its capacity by 2020. So it has given itself an ambitious goal to achieve. Even if they don't achieve 100% of it, they achieve 75% of it, that's still it's a big step forward. That's my take.
Yeah, while I agree with that, but still I am positive. I am very optimistic on the view the government is taking, because the vision is good. Because if you see from Indian imports point of view, we are the highest import that we're paying out of the foreign exchange going out of the country is for coal, oil, and gold. These are the top three commodities that we are paying a huge forex outside the country. So from vision point of view, India being one of the largest, top 5 reserves in the world and the top 5 producer in the world, the question is, why should we import? So the vision from the government point of view in making it more economical, the vision is good. But as Mr. Sabya rightly said, there are a lot of issues. It is such a large democratic country. We have to go through various processes and more transparent approaches. So that's the reason, if you see the recent Supreme Court ruling in last year, they deallocated all the 204 blocks to make it more transparent, more efficient, more available to everybody. So the efforts are being taken, especially this particular government. One of their main agenda they came into the power was about addressing coal and power. And if you see from the previous history of India's government point of view, they had two different ministries of coal and power. But this is the first time they made a single ministry of coal and power, so that any decision or any target is set, they are able to meet rather than fighting each other. So this is the first time they had merged both the ministries, and they are trying to see how best economical they are. I'll give you one example. I'm sure Fabio knows this about. This happened a deal last year. For example, I just wanted to explain what all they can do. So one example I'll tell you. Last year there was a contract, a coal swap deal between NTPC. I'm sure you all know about NTPC. It's the largest central government power utility in the country, and with the state, one of the state utility called GEB. What they did is NTPC have various plants in the country, and also every electricity board have power plants. So what they did is, for example, NTPC imports, say NTPC consumes close to, if I'm not wrong, it's 177 million tons per annum. So they are the largest, right? I mean, I'm sure they must be the largest in the world also.
Yeah, I think that.
I'm not sure. So 177 million tons they use. Close to 10% they import. because of, again, the non-availability of coal. So they import close to 10%, close to say 18 to 16 to 17, 16 to 18, I would say. So 16 to 18 million tons they import. So what they used to do, they import to East Coast and also to various parts. They import, you can see, I'm not sure, the map, if you can see, on the East Coast, West Bengal, Orissa, Chhattisgarh, they have the, if you see, this is the place where many NTPC plants are here. They used to import coal from Indonesia to here. This is GEB. Gujarat, there is an electricity board called GEB, Gujarat Electricity Board. They used to take Indian coal from, this is the, if you see, if you know about the Indian coal mining, the major coal minings are all available here. So they take coal from here to here by rail. So this government, after they come, they did a simple one trial transaction of 1 million ton. What they decided to do, instead of moving coal from here to here on imported coal by sea, they decided to move from Indonesia to Gujarat, because the cost of seaborne shipping is very cheaper. So they moved from Indonesia to Gujarat, and this coal from Coal India, instead of moving from here to here by railway, which is many dollars, they use it in the nearby NTPC plants. By doing this, they are saving minimum $25 million for 1 million ton, and if it goes to 2.5 million tons and above, they will be saving $150 million. So just a small juggle between what they can do for 1 million to 2 million tons, they are able to save $150 million. So if, I'm not saying the entire, okay, Coal India's production is 500, I'm not saying entire 500 million will be done like this, but at least some portion, even they do say 10% of this type of an efficient manner of addressing the logistics and transporting issue, the savings will be larger. And by doing this, entire this stretch of the railway movement is free. 1 million ton of railway is free. It can be used for various other factors. So what I'm saying is, it's a practical solution which is available, and they are able to do because this government, central government, and the state government are the same. So it's a simple political understanding. So that's an example.
I'd like to remind everybody that you can send in your questions to the iPad here. Obviously, raise your hands if you have any questions throughout, but you can also email your questions to moderator@coaltrans.com. So another, Fabio here's, another point that Fabio mentioned yesterday was that for the first time in a long time, we've seen cargoes coming from Russia to India and Sri Lanka. I know Coal and Oil was one of the first to import Russian coal in 1999. I have to ask both of you, do you think it's a one-off? Or how do you see this increased aggression, you might call it, in terms of international supply to India? Do you think Russian coal could be sustainable in the long term?
Yeah, the Russian coal, I think if I'm not wrong, so far the imports has been less than 1 million tons for this year. But the positive news is a lot of power plants are evaluating Russian coal primarily because of the low ash content, the high CV, as compared to probably Australian or a South African of a 5.5 NAR variety. So there is a potential, provided the freight costs remain low, making it viable from Far East Russia into India. We see the potential of Russian coal as a long-term potential into India being very good, because as we see the growth in Coal India production rising, going forward towards that billion-ton mark, more and more high CV coals would be imported, because we expect the production to be more on the lower CV side with high ash. It needs to be blended with the high CV and low ash coals. So that's where Russian coal would play a major role going forward. So my view on this is Russian coal would gain a market share going forward to as much as 10% of the market share of the imported coal in 5 to 10 years' time, if not more.
I agree with Mr. Sabya on this. I mean, my question is the sustainability. See, because quality-wise, technically, yes, it can, compensate on South Africa or Indonesia and Australia. Technically, yes. It has come in the past, but the question is the sustainability, because the reason today it is viable because of the low freight rates. So if the freight rate slightly goes up, I don't think it would be competitive for India. So the question comes is sustainability. I mean, otherwise India has a geographical advantage to take the coal from east or west. So that is an advantage. But I really doubt on the sustainability of coming it on a long-term basis. And today you cannot plan anything based on Russia for long-term. See, assuming you're putting up a power plant, you can depend on Indonesia the most. Next, you can depend on Australia or South Africa. But depending on Russia, I think still I will be cautious about it.
And obviously Modi has changed a lot since he arrived in government. But one area, perhaps you could say he's failed so far, was to get support of the opposition in pushing through the controversial land bill in India. Could you explain a little bit about what the land bill is and its implications for coal developers in India?
Yeah, land bill is a crucial issue. For example, for you to grow into more mining, for example, if you want to open up new mines, if you want to enhance the infrastructure, railway, so land is important. So, but unfortunately, land bill, for example, they tried for last 1 year, but it didn't go through because they didn't have the support of the opposition. So they're not able to do it. So that is one of the biggest challenges now India is going through. Because it has to be properly, because they're trying to make some amendments, because that's where it is. Because what happened at the end of the day, India is an agricultural nation. So farmers has to be given a top priority. So today you are taking the land from them, and then you're using it for mining, you're using it for building rail, etc. So that is a big issue now at the moment, the topmost burning issue. But at the same time, it has a lot of challenges in coming up with the, like as we said, whether we are going to able to achieve the billion-ton production. It has a correlation with that.
I think if I may just add to that, Mr. Modi has been struggling with these land reforms, not just for the coal sector, that is required for the overall plan that he has set for himself in terms of infrastructure growth, in terms of industrialization, in terms of made in India kind of promotion campaign, which he has taken up, that a lot of manufacturers would come and set up manufacturing facilities in India. It's all related to land reform. So it's a very important bill for the government to get through. And in that, his struggle is very similar to what US government is currently facing in passing any bill in the parliament. So here he doesn't have the majority in the upper house of the parliament, and which they are hopeful rather in achieving it by 2016. So once that happens, obviously we would expect things to move a lot faster. But at this point in time, land reform bill in its current form is being opposed. The valuation which is given to the people who are losing their land is not good enough as per the current bill. So that's being reevaluated, which may impact a lot in the capital expenditure layout of various companies, because if you have to start compensating a lot more than what you had initially planned for, so that would require your entire capital layout to be restructured. In fact, I read a report that Coal India, its plan of 1 billion tons, is based on certain valuation for the land reform, land acquisition. So it can change as much by $5 to $10 billion if the new compensation structure comes in from the land acquisition bill.
So who would it affect most? I mean, presumably it will affect potentially new IPP developers, but would it affect any of the 204 coal blocks to be allocated, or are they all sorted?
Yeah, it will have some effect, because 204 coal blocks is what the planning is. But at the moment, they have allocated close to 110 blocks. Out of this, only 42 is an operating mine, whereas other mines are just in progress and just. So operating mines, okay, they're almost ready. They're already started operating. But the new ones, I think we have to go through a lot of issues. Definitely there is going to be a lot of clearance delays, because it has a lot of government approvals and things like that. So definitely it will have an impact. So whereas the current 42 coal blocks which is ready to mine, that is going on. So no issue. That's the reason if you see most of the new IPPs are all trying to depend on imported coal, especially mostly from Indonesia, because that is more viable and something which is ready to, that's more dependable, I would say. So even if you see, for example, NTPC, this means central government, there is a plant called Pudi Madaka. There's a plant they're trying to build in Vizag, South India. So it's a 4,000 megawatts plant. It is going to come in 2019-20. If you see that they're targeting only imported coal. So which clearly shows that dependency, although, yeah, we are expecting Coal India to do more, but again, end of the day, you have to see how economical it's going to be. See, Coal India, as we see, you mostly the north, central, and eastern part of India, whereas for the entire coast of India, the south and the west, it cannot be cheaper. Even they produce 1 billion ton, for example. It cannot, it may not be. I'm not saying 100%. I'm just saying may not be cheaper to move, through rail. So the coastal plants still depend on imported coal, and it will be more viable, I would say. We have seen in past many years. So even now, if you see, they are dependent.
One more technical point here, Kaamil, is the new generation of power plants which has been built in the last 4 years and the ones upcoming in India are working on supercritical power generation. And Indian coal is not ideally suited for that. It needs to have a blend. It needs to bring it down to certain ash percentages to make it viable. So even a 1 billion ton is produced, assuming that everything is achieved, a 25% needs to be blended to make it really usable for these new power plants which are coming in. So in a most optimistic scenario of a 1 billion ton production, I still see India importing 250 million tons of coal to blend to make it viable to make it a use as it is. So imports are going to stay. They're not going to rise. They're not going to increase at the rate which was projected before, like 25% growth every year. It's not going to happen. But yes, the fact of the matter is India needs to import because of the quality of the coal available locally. The coking coal has to be imported. India, the growth plan for Coal India doesn't include coking coal production. They realize that the coking coal that they can incrementally produce is all underground, and that's not going to be developed so quickly. So they have made it very clear in their expectations. They have set the expectations right that the coking coal needs to be based on the imported component. So India is going to look for, I think, based on the current steel projections for 2020, which is talking about 150 million tons of actual production, not the installed capacity. So based on that, India has to import 300 million tons of coking coal. So coking coal imports are definitely, it's a given fact. Yeah, thermal coal, there is always permutation, combination. Kaamil is right that the hinterland plants probably can switch over to the domestic coal if it is excess available. What we have seen is the hinterland plants, which is primarily the NTPC plants or the government utility plants, they currently import around 30 million tons. So that can easily switch over to local coal when it becomes available. Similarly, all the new plants which are coming up in the hinterland or in the east coast or in the center, probably they can still be catered. But the coastal, the south, and the west coast definitely will have their challenges taking from the Coal India plants.
I'm going to ask in a minute if anyone has any questions, but before I do, you mentioned that there's likely always to be a need for imported coking coal because of the lack of domestic reserves. Obviously, we've seen ICVL invest in Mozambique, but on the thermal coal side, do you think that there's still much opportunity or much likelihood of Indian investment in thermal reserves overseas to secure supply?
Given the situation, what we discussed in the last 15 minutes, given the scenario that the local production is going to rise and people are still not very sure as to how that's going to pan out, what kind of quality is going to come out. There's no clear blueprint as regards to the quality distribution of these new incremental capacities which are coming in. So I would say it's still a wait and watch for the Indian industry to scout for more assets, though it's very good time to probably look at assets given the valuations currently, but people are hesitant given the scenario that the domestic production is going to go up. Yes, those who have need for coking coal as well as thermal coal, I think they would continue to look for those assets which can at least give them a hedge that, okay, even if I don't move the thermal coal to India, but at least I move the coking coal portion to India and I can move the thermal coal somewhere else. So I think that's why the Mozambique asset is critical, because it gives at least a security of coking coal into India, and most of the coking coal imports happen in India for the West Coast plants or the South plants, and Mozambique is that way ideally located for those steel mills. So that's my take on this.
I mean, I
And,
agree with you.
and Kaamil, I mean, coal and oil is you were originally a trader, and then you've become also a power plant owner. Would you ever consider bidding on one of the coal blocks to secure supply for your Tuticorin plant?
I mean, that's something, there's a plan for it. But again, it may take some more time, because what happens, we are in the south coast. For south coast, taking coal from northeast will be too expensive. So it is not that easy. So even we tried now to understand the prices, but still, but one good thing that what we have done, we have in way back in 2008 and 9, we decided to go for, when we decided to invest in the power plant, we make sure that our design is such a way that we will be able to blend Indian coal with the imported coal. So that's how our plant is designed. So we can take ash up to 20%. So even you blend even 35% of Indian ash with a 5% or 4% of Indonesian coal, you are able to survive. So that's how we have designed. So definitely, if there's an opportunity for us to get into the Indian coal blocks and opportunity, definitely we will go for it, because that hedges your price risk. You're not exposed too much to imported coal price.
Another, I think, important point which is going to decide the import domestic mix for India going forward is going to be the prices of domestic coal as well. So far, in India, the imported coal has not been dictated by the domestic coal prices. Like in China, you track on a real-time basis what is the local prices, but that's going to probably change going forward in India. People are going to see what is going to be the auction prices for domestic coals. That may have an impact on the imported coal prices. So we are already seeing that in current pricing of South African coals for low CV categories, for example, 4,800 NAR category, going below $30 FOB, saw a lot of interest suddenly from India, even from the plants which are using the linkage domestic coal, because they saw value in importing 4,800 at those levels. So obviously the linkage between the Indian domestic price and the international price is going to get a lot more synchronized, which is not currently, and so that's something to watch out for going forward.
Are there any questions from the audience? There's some from Hewley.
Some of the increase in demand for electricity in India comes from the in rural areas that don't yet have electricity. Do you see solar panels supplying that electricity rather than the grid, and therefore coal not getting in on that?
I think should I answer that? Yeah. What we see in the current government's policy is that they have, though they are taken coal as their first task of increasing the local production, they have not neglected the renewable side of energy mix. We see a lot more solar wind plants coming up in India in the next 3 to 5 years. And for the first time, we are seeing the solar plants being competitive in terms of their numbers. We are seeing numbers as much as 7.5 rupees, 8 rupees for solar plants as compared to probably 5 rupees for coal plants. So it's coming closer. The subsidies are getting lower. So I agree with you that India is gifted with huge areas where there are abundant sunlight, and the solar plants should play a major role going forward. But as we have been discussing since yesterday, whether that can substitute really the coal, that's a question which is for the broader audience to address that. But yeah, the incremental capacities in renewables is happening in India, and government is focusing in that direction. So I expect that they would get more and more competitive and have capacities for storage, etc., built in, which is going to decide how it moves forward.
Yeah, the prices are competitive. As Sabya said, even it has come as low as 6 rupees.
6 rupees.
As low, the recent tender, the solar PPA is around 6 rupees.
Wow.
So the question is definitely there is, I mean, I think the government is targeting 100,000 megawatts by 2022.
Correct.
So that's a good target. But again, one of the, I mean, although there is a good interest shown on renewable energy, but another question comes in the point, I mean, the power load factor, PLF. Because PLF for solar is only 20 or 25%, whereas coal is above 70%. So the question comes again, although the cost has, one good thing is the cost has come down. What they say, what was $100 is now only $40 or $30. So the cost has come down. But again, the question comes with the efficiency, and we are not requiring small volume. We need a big volume of power. So for that, I think coal still, I think, will be the
base
major,
power.
yeah, base power.
Yeah.
So we're running slightly over time, but I do have one or two more questions. How likely is the introduction of commercial mining in India?
I think it's positive. I think it's positive because the Indian government allows FDI, the foreign direct investment in the mining sector. But I think, again, there will be some resistance for the foreign companies to enter because of a lot of complication in the policies and things like that. If it is made more transparent, if it is made more understandable, I think there is a positive news. I think there is a lot of interest shown by the Australian companies. I think already some people are already working on that. And I think it's a good approach. If you are inviting foreign companies, they'll be able to have a more advanced infrastructure and latest facilities. I think we should go for it.
I think there is an announcement of 500 million metric tons of commercial mining, which will be allowed in the going forward.
500 million.
500 million metric tons.
On top of Coal India's.
Yeah. So that much reserve would be allocated towards commercial mining. How that gets translated into policies and how that gets passed through various phases needs to be seen, considering the amount of resistance they're having on the land reforms. So, yeah, I mean, the intent is there, and it's a very good step forward. Coal India, given its stature as the largest producer in the world, etc., but it still probably has to imbibe a lot of modern practices being used in the mining sector, and that would be helpful if they have comparisons against other private sector players coming in and setting up some benchmarks which they need to follow.
I've got one more final question which has come through on the iPad before we close, and that is generators are not always able to pay for coal deliveries on time. How can this be resolved?
Not going to be easy. Even we are struggling now. So even for coal as well as power is the same. Because coal or power, when you supply to the electricity board, the delay is too much. It's like 3 to 6 months. That is the delay. But it's not going to be easy because it is, again, related to so many other issues. See, for example, again, it is related to the financial position of the electricity board. And in India, what happens is coal is given a lot of subsidy. Sorry, power. Power is given a lot of subsidy. For example, some of the state governments give free power for agriculture. And they give subsidy for all the villages. So where the money is going to come from? So again, it has come from the system. So that gets delayed. So, but one good thing is the performance is guaranteed. And we have done coal and power business, coal business for many years and power business in the recently. So, the good thing is that you are protected with regard to the payments, but delay is something which is definitely there. And I don't think it is going to just like that reduce, but may get better. We hope for it.
The economic development of India is not reached its potential. In the current government, there are a lot of expectation for growth exceeding 10% going forward, but it's still to be delivered. So once we go to the second phase of the current government, where they expect to be in the full majority in the both houses, and they start really delivering on their promises, we probably would see a change in demand for all commodities, including power. So yes, you are right. If you look at the first 6 months of the current financial year, the power sector is running at a load factor of 58% as compared to 65% last year. So in general, there is a slowness in the economy. Absolute numbers may be similar, a little higher. Given the number of plants which has come up, the new plants come up, the efficiency has not been up to potential.
I'd like to thank our two excellent panelists, for their time today. And also, again, I'd like to thank Trevor Sikorsky.